All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. We are Seahawks Brendan Nelson, joined this week by Brandon from the Hawks Nest. I'm sure most of you are familiar with him. We've done this collaboration a couple times already, and it's been received very well. So we're going to continue to do it until there's no more Seahawks stuff to talk about. But right now, there's a lot of Seahawks stuff to talk about. This team has disappointed us yet again. They've shown many problems that I think even the more pessimistic among us were not anticipating. And the team finds himself at 1-2 and in water, struggling going into this game against the 49ers. So we're going to talk about this upcoming Niners game because that's obviously a big deal. But before we get to the game, we're definitely going to spend some time first just talking about this team and where they are and how we should feel about them and what our expectations should be going forward after a pretty messy game in Minnesota. So first, I'm going to welcome Brandon to the show. Good to have you back on.
I appreciate you having me back in Seahawks Brandon Nelson. I love always coming aboard. So one of my favorite times of the week.
All right. So we got to start with this Vikings game. Obviously, I know we both were kind of expecting to win going into that one. I know we were both feeling decently about it. Didn't work out that way. The offense got off to a great start. That honestly, the whole first half, I thought the offense played really well. And they had a scoring drive effectively on all their first half possessions that meant anything. They picked up at least one first down on every one of their possessions throughout the game. And I said that if Wilson took his short stuff, took the easier throws, took the quicker throws, and showed some of the attributes that I thought would be valued in the Shane Waldron system, we would win. And he did do those things, and yet somehow we still lose. So this defense, and that's the main crux of what I've been talking about this week in terms of what this team needs to do now, because this defense maybe played their worst game under Carroll that I can recall on Sunday. And it really does disturb me to see. So, Brandon, I'm going to ask you, what is your perspective on that Vikings game after a few days?
In watching a couple of your videos, and I was surprised to see it, I thought you would be maybe the voice of calmness in this, but it seemed like you were seeing it in much the same way I was seeing it watching your stuff, and that is that this is something that's a little different than excusing it away as just the early start of the season jitters, or they didn't have any preseason, or whatever plethora of excuses I'm sure you've heard on your end that I'm hearing on my end. This was a unique type of loss, and when you look at the embarrassing defeats over the 10-year period with Carroll, you've got that Steelers game back in like 2010 that Schneider talked about. This is the game we're never going to get pushed around the field like this again. And that was there's those games like that come through here and there that are just kind of really embarrassing. You've had two of your more embarrassing defeats in the 10 years of Coach Carroll in back-to-back weeks. I don't think that that's coincidental. I don't think that that's just random. I do think that there is a little bit of a trend involved with that. And when I look at this game, I'm glad as well. In addition, there's a lot of people I've been trying to fight up against over the last week telling me that offense. And they keep mentioning the offense as being the problem out of this game, or the offense last week. And I keep scratching my head at it. And it's made me frankly kind of frustrated. I probably have gotten short on it because I go, look at this defense. This is a league worst defense. This is a defense back on pace again like they were last year to be historically bad. That is what you got to first and foremost stop on and look at and say, this is unacceptable. And when you look across the board, every single player is playing worse than who they are as a player. Everybody's choosing right now to have their worst season. This really leads me to believe in a lot of respects that this is going to be a tough fix to do this on the fly. This isn't like past seasons where you say, well, our pass rush is a little bit weak. Let's go get Clowney. Oh, well, our safety position with Lano Hill and Tedrick Thompson sucks. Let's get Quandre Diggs. We're not in that same place this year, in my opinion. There's a lot of different things that need to be fixed right now. The linebacker position's broken. Cornerback room is completely destroyed right now. They can't stop the run, which is weird because they put 2 1-techs out there on early downs, which you'd think they'd be able to stop the run. And it's not just inside run or outside run. They can't stop the outside. They can't stop the inside. They can't set the edge. They can't get their hands on any balls. Say nothing for an interception. They can't even tip a ball. It is a defense that is absolutely the worst we've seen in the Coach Carroll era. And frankly, Brendon, I don't think that there's a lot of excuses for it. I don't think that they should be here. And it comes down to me, and from my standpoint of coaching and the way that they've put this personnel together. And it lands right at the feet to me of Coach Carroll as kind of the end all be all. I know Shiner's the general manager, but he's the grand poobah. So he's the one that I'm putting the blame on with this.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. There is, and this is something that I said in the off season. You can go back and watch my videos before I think maybe a little after the draft, but it was months ago where I said, I'm willing to be patient with this offense, but I'm not willing to be patient with this defense. I will absolutely sit down on the panic button if I don't see the defense come out and play well immediately.
Yeah.
Because this scheme has been in place for a long time. The defensive coordinator has been there. This is now his 4th year. Most of the players have been here for at least 1 year. And the players that you added are guys like Kerry Hyder Jr., who should be a pretty easy guy to slot in there. Pretty much everybody else was here last year. You have DJ Reed, who was here for like half a season last year, but everyone else, Bobby's been here forever. Jordan Brooks was here last year. Jamal Adams was here last year. Quandre Diggs has been here a year and a half. So everything has been in place for a while. This defense should be probably one of the 5 best defenses in the league, I think, because the pieces have been in place for a while. And if those pieces are not capable of producing top 5 results, then why are those the pieces you've decided to stick with for an extended period of time? You could have moved on from a guy like a Trey Flowers if he wasn't any good, but you stuck with him all this time. You could have moved on from some of these other, like maybe Rasheem Green, who's been here now. This is his 4th year as well. You could have moved on from him if he can't be part of a great defense, but you decided to stick with him. And the thing that really disturbs me is how often this coaching staff and front office gets things wrong. And I'm not just talking about the draft picks, because every team misses draft picks, although we probably miss more than most people right now.
Yeah.
I'm talking about things like Poona Ford, where you have him for 3 years and he's played, I'd say, about 3,000 snaps for you. And you're watching him play every day in practice and training camp. And this offseason, you let Jarran Reed go. And you go, okay, our plan to replace Jarran Reed, and obviously cutting Jarran Reed was the correct decision, but your plan to replace him is, okay, we're going to let Poona Ford play the 3 tech. And I'm sitting here thinking, okay, you've been watching him play every day for 3 years. You've had him play 3,000 snaps for you. You guys should know with 100% certainty, can he be a full-time 3 tech? So when they said that, I thought to myself, okay, he must be able to do it. And through 3 games, I'm not seeing it. How can you make that mistake? How can you be wrong about that? That's not, you're just scouting a guy based off some tape, and then you make a decision to bring him in, and then he's not as good as you thought. That's, this guy's in front of you for 3 years, 3,000 snaps every day in practice, and you missed, it looks like. So that's the kind of stuff that really gets to me.
It's, I think, the everyday in practice thing that gets me too, because with Poona Ford, you would think on the surface of looking at that, oh, you're going to move a 1 tech to a 3 tech. You're going to take a guy that's more mainly of, I'm splitting double teams, I'm holding my ground at the point of attack, to now I need to be a guy that can get into the backfield and be a disruptor. You would naturally think as a layman fan that I don't think that would really work naturally as a transition, but they must be seeing something in practice. With Trey Flowers, we see enough on the field to go, his highest upside, the best version of him coming into this year was maybe he could touch on to league average state. You thought they must be seeing something in practice where he's flashing and jumping routes, and it's just he can't put it together in the game. You know, you hear those stories of guys that are just practice superstars that can't quite make it happen on game day. But when you see this over and over and over again, it becomes a trend. When there's a multitude of players like this, Rasheem Green, you brought in there, it becomes a trend. And when you look at it specifically on the defensive side of the ball, to me, this really comes down to 2017. That's where this really, to me, started to go to where we're now really bearing this at this point. It took like 3 years for the dead cat bounce to finally land. But that's what's happening. It was the Schottenheimer hire and it was the Norton hire, because both of those hires were about Coach Carroll doubling back down into his base ideology, not expanding, not innovating, not going beyond his comfort zone. And now we get to bear the brunt of this now. We're finally just beginning to turn the offense around. It's going to take some while to get through that. But the defense, you didn't do that. You went back to Ken Norton. There's this staggering stat I saw yesterday on Twitter, Brendon. 92% of the time, what the Seattle Seahawks show pre-snap defensively is exactly what they show post-snap defensively. That is the highest rate in the entire NFL. The best
I saw that too.
That to me is a staggering amount, especially when you keep in mind in the forefront of your head, we're not a defense that disguises. We're not a defense that confuses quarterbacks. We make everything so easy to read. Why have so many average quarterbacks been able to tear us apart over the years? Because they can easily read what they're looking at, and they're not going to play outside of themselves of an average quarterback. They're not going to trust that cannon laser rocket arm to throw it between two coverage points. They're just going to take the check down all day. And this is where we've landed at. And it's because Coach Carroll just wanted to hold on and embrace his ideology and not expand out. And now there's no answers here, because you can talk all day about let's get blitz heavy. You don't have man-to-man corners on the outside that can handle blitz heavy stuff. They're going to get beat like a drum. And you're not built to be a blitz heavy scheme in your 4-3 under, which is made to play zone and have everybody sit back in coverage. It's what makes me reticent to believe that there is an actual true fix here, Brendon, because of the fact that you made this ideological doubling down back 3 years ago. And Carroll's been holding on to it for dear life ever since a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I've had some people in my chats and in my comments the last several days say, well, if we beat the 49ers, are you going to change your mind about some of this stuff? And the thing to understand, maybe some of these people haven't seen my videos going back years, but this isn't one decision point. I can think of 4 different points over the last 2 calendar years where you really could have fired somebody like a Ken Norton Jr. very reasonably. 2019, the defense was well below average. You could have fired him mid-season. You didn't. Could have fired him after the season because the defense never really got that much better. You didn't. 2020, the defense looked like one of the worst in the history of the NFL to start. You could have fired him then. You didn't. You still could have fired him after 2020. I know the defense got better, but you still could have said, we kind of want to go in a different direction here. It seems pretty clear that the coaching is not the reason why this defense got better. The players just started playing better. You didn't. And now we're here again. And it's not just one bad game or 2 bad games that has me thinking about Norton and Carroll in this way. This is something that has been building for a while. And going back to the last 2 years, I think that the 2019 Seahawks might be one of the weakest 11-5 teams in the history of the NFL. And last year's Seahawks team might be one of the weakest 12-4 teams in the history of the NFL. Yeah. I remember Scott Kazmar on Twitter in 2019. He said that at one point the Seahawks were 7-2 and had a point differential of like 9. Yeah. And he said, this has never happened in the history of the NFL before. A team to have this good of a record and basically be playing 500 football overall. And I thought that was really interesting and illuminating. And maybe we're just kind of reverting now to where we should have been all along, but we just got lucky 2 years in a row. I don't know. But this Norton thing, this Carroll thing has been building for years.
Yeah, it has been. That's when I hear the same thing in my chat. People go, it's just 2 games. I said, this isn't just 2 games. This is years of seeing this data, seeing this trend, seeing this stuff go this way, whether you see it in flashes for a couple games or a run of 8 games. It's been there and it's existed, and it's been something that we've gone, well, maybe they can turn, but if anything, it's regressing into that direction rather than coming up into the daylight. I just don't see it going that it just to have a sake of having optimism or to say something's going good, though they'll fix it. Because they fixed it before, because they've never lost 3 games in a row before. Oh, they'll get I don't operate under that it'll absolutely get fixed because it's always been done before. This is one that's a little bit of a different horse of a different color. And yes, this does go back to years. And the hiring of Norton in particular, the reason why he continues to fail upwards, might be one of the few coaches I've seen in recent history outside of Adam Gase who fails upwards. But the reason he's failing upwards is because we know Coach Carroll wanted to bring in a yes man. And that's the problem here with it's the issue with the team where Carroll can have good ideas and still be a good coach, but he had to make that transition a couple of years ago to understanding what he doesn't know. What is it that the teams are attacking your team on, both on the offensive side of the ball and defensive side? How are they going at that? Because they've solved you in a lot of realm. And he didn't look at it that way. He no, let's just stay to our ideology. He wanted to go further ingrained in the ideology by bringing on a guy like Norton or a guy like Shoddy. And it just hasn't worked. And he's got no more answers for it. And here's my real issue with why I don't think it gets fixed going forward, Brendon, is to fix something, somebody's got to take responsibility for it. And the common denominator I've heard across the board from Seahawks players and coaches, really going back even to this offseason with the Wilson and the Carroll stuff, nobody at any point in time takes the buck like the old Truman. President Truman used to have a deal on the front of his desk that said the buck stops here. I'm no fan of Truman, but I like that the buck stops here approach to a leader. That means no excuses. It stops right here. I take the responsibility for it. Who is the guy that's taking responsibility in this organization right now? Who? Everyone will say something like, yeah, this is wrong and this isn't good, but they'll always put a but on it. Or they'll say like Trey Flowers last week, oh, you guys are expecting me to be Richard Sherman, man. I'm not Richard Sherman, okay? Who said that? Who said ever compared you to Richard Sherman? But they all have an excuse. They all got a reason. And that means it's not going to get fixed, because to get fixed means somebody's got to take responsibility and say, I'm effing up. I'm causing some of the problems here. I'd like to hear if you think you're seeing kind of the same thing, but that's at least what I'm seeing a little bit and that's where it gets really dicey to me.
Right, absolutely. Carol was asked about Trey Flowers' comments, because Trey Flowers basically said the scheme is bad. That's effectively what he said when he was asked. He didn't say it exactly like that, but he basically said that. And Carol basically said, no, the scheme is what we've always been doing, which I guess is technically true. And then he also said he thought the corners played fine against the Vikings. So he's basically, I don't understand. I understand that he can't just throw people under the bus in public on a radio show like that. But he's trying to tell us the players played fine and the scheme is fine. And yet I'm watching that game. I did a video, I don't know if you saw it, where I took screenshots of every time a Vikings receiver caught the ball without a defender within 4 yards of him. On some of those plays, they were literally 8 yards away. And something went wrong there. You can't tell me that the players are fine and the scheme is fine if that is happening 10 times in one game against an offense, by the way, that was missing their best player. So that is absolutely the thing. The only thing I can think of, and this sounds a little crazy, but I did another video where I talked about how the problem with this defense might be that they're trying to be a little too fancy. Because I don't know if you know who Matty F. Brown is, but he's one of the writers for Seahawks Maven. He's on Twitter, one of my favorite Twitter followers, like one of 3 people I still follow on Twitter.
Yeah, I know Matty.
Yeah, and
he's good.
He's done a lot of breakdowns the last week about how the Seahawks defense is trying to do creative stuff. They're dropping defensive linemen into coverage. They're blitzing linebackers. They're doing zone blitzes. They're doing different things. It's just working really, really poorly. Yeah. So he actually said, I think the only thing you can do, just rush 4, drop 7, cover 3, and just stay there and keep it simple for these guys. And as weird as that is, as weird as it is to say that a Pete Carroll defense needs to get simpler, that's the only thing I can think of that might make this better.
Well, you're not wrong. I think you're right in that if there's a potential of something to improve it, or Matty's not wrong either, in that going to being simple is probably the only hope that there does exist to be there. It's a little bit of, though, circular as far as you get there, because the reason that you leave out of the base cover 3 concepts, the reason that you don't do as much zone is because the teams around the league have solved it with their Seahawk beater plays. You know, the Rams with their crossers, for instance, kill us. The flood zone concepts kill us. So when you go back to embracing that style of defense now, all of the old Seahawk beater plays come back out there. And because you can't be terribly complicated on the defensive side of the ball, there's no real twist of the turn to adjust to that. And you just sort of have to sit there and take it, hope for a tip pass, hope for the pass rush to get to the quarterback and cause a fumble, which, again, to your point on this, I still think this is as good an answer as there is. There's not a great answer right now. So it's about the best answer there is. That's the best answer. The other downside to this is going to the 4-3 and then sticking Jamal Adams then essentially into a cover 2 situation means now you're not you're misusing something that you gave 2 first-round picks and a 3rd-round pick for, and you don't really have a plan for them, a way to utilize them due to your coaching ineptitude, due to your coaching inability to draw up X's and O's to put your players in a position to succeed. And so, they have been doing a lot of complicated stuff. The reason they're doing that, I think, is a little bit to try to work in Jamal, but it's also an acknowledgement of the fact our old cover 3 stuff doesn't work anymore. It stopped working after a time period. The returns have been lesser and lesser and lesser. I think that you can get still a little bit out of it because we do have a front 4 that I think if you get Alton Robinson out there, Darrell Taylor, get your best pass rushers on the field, actually, then they can still get there with it. But that's, to me, the old problem with this is that I don't know that either way is going to really work on it. And you going back to that cover 3 is still, I don't know if it'll work. That's my worry, but it's the best option that's available.
Right. And my thing is, I don't think it can get worse because the Seahawks defense right now is in a state where it can't get worse, because I understand we were giving up more yards and more points last year on defense to start the season, but at least we were getting turnovers. At least we were occasionally getting a 3 and out. Right now, this defense can't even get off the field. Like in that second half against the Vikings, we held them to 9 points, 3 field goals, but it doesn't matter because every drive took basically 8 minutes off the clock because they're picking up every third down. Well, yeah, we hold them out of the end zone, but so what? Our offense never gets the ball. So we're not getting QB pressure. We're not forcing turnovers. We've effectively forced 1 turnover this season through 3 games. I don't even count the one against the Colts. That's whatever. Like,
Yeah.
yay,
No,
but
yeah,
not a
it's
real
what,
turnover. It's
what
not a
they
real
do.
turnover.
Yeah.
And I don't think it can get worse, so you may as well try that. That's the only thing I can think of because clearly your attempts to do more complex things are not working because, like you said, pretty much every play, we're giving away what we're doing before the snap. We are what you see is what you get 92% of the time or whatever it was you said. So
And
that's
it's not
the only thing I got.
and it's and with the just in remembering this historically speaking, if we look at the 4-3 under Coach Carroll, if it's 2014, if it's 2015, we're blitzing at about the 32nd rate in the league, 31st rate in the league in those years. So when you have a system that's built to not be blitz heavy, and then you start on the fly going, hey, we're going to be blitz heavy, you've not brought in prospects and drafted for guys that are good blitzers because you've tended to favor other things. It's not in your scheme to do it because you don't understand the way to do the timing of the blitzes, the way to teach it properly. You can implement it. You can make it, you can throw those zone blitzes out there and you can actually make it look like that, but it doesn't make it effective because you don't know the details for how to make that type of defense or that type of blitz heavy attack really run and really work.
Right. So yeah, and again, I want to reiterate, and I think you're on the same channel as me here. I did expect this defense to do something to start the season because for multiple reasons. The reasons I said about all the pieces being in place, and you also had the investments of the offseason where you put a draft picks. I know we haven't seen Trey Brown get on the field yet, but you used free agency money. You re-signed some defensive players. You could have just said, okay, I don't think I can build a good defense. Let's just put everything into the offense. Let's just make it easy as possible. You could have done that, but we didn't.
Mm-hmm. Yes, great point. This is my issue with this. He made a choice, Carroll did, to stay in this lane, to stay defensive heavy, to hire sycophants and yes men and episodic hires so that they'll all not challenge him and he can do things just the way he wants to do it because his vision is so solidified and he's so secure in it that if he just sticks to his vision, it'll win. That means that now you own the responsibility of when it goes bad in every way, shape, and form because you've taken on so much of the power. You've sat up there and said, I'm going to have my hands on the offense, my defense, the personnel side of things. And yeah, when you look at let's say that 2017 season, when you're coming in and Legion of Boom talent's drained out, you're in that kind of restock mode at that point. You're not here now. You've had 3 years of restocking to get to this point. You've been able to hand put this team together exactly as you've seen fit, Carroll. No one's held you back. No one stopped you through this time period. And you didn't go offensive heavy. To your point, Seattle should have done this in 2017. So it said, I've mentioned you before, the Belichick example to Brady, right? Oh my God, I got a Hall of Fame quarterback halfway into my career. I know I'm a defensive-minded coach, but let me expand myself here a little bit. Let me go outside of my comfort zone. And I just think it's one of those things where they didn't do it. Now we're paying the price for it. It's where you should have done it. You should have built this around this offensive side. This is where Russell's got a little bit of to be a point. Because what would this offense look like right now? It's looking pretty good. Okay. Right now, what would it look like right now if we had another Pro Bowl or 2 on that offensive line, another playmaker out on the outside, probably pretty hard to stop. Probably not. You're probably putting up points pretty consistently all the way through the game a little bit at that point. But you didn't do that, Carroll. You said, no, my defense. I want to be still a defensive-minded coach. I still want a circle of toughness being rounded out. There ain't no circle of toughness here. Your end is failing. And so you choose to do that. You decide you're going to be that, I'm going to run it. Then you've got to be able to face the heat of your Carroll. And he should be facing the heat right now. Fans should be pushing this really squarely at this point on him. And I've been a guy hard on Schneider, hard on Wilson at times, but this one falls to me squarely on Carroll.
Yeah. And it is, like I said, it is too bad because when that Vikings game started, I had a feeling based off those first few drives that we might have been looking at like a breakout game for this offense. We might have been looking at a big breakout game for Wilson where he shuts up the haters after what happened in that Titans game. And he never got the ball. I think we had 7 real possessions in that whole game.
Yeah.
Because you had the one right before the end of the half and one right before the end of the game. And like I said, first 4 drives you went down and should have gotten points. I know you missed a field goal. He usually makes that, whatever. But you drove down into scoring range 4 times, and Metcalf looked great, and all the concerns from the first 2 weeks looked like they were melting away. We were using Gerald Everett more. Offensive line in that first half looked good. And then by the second half, every time we get the ball, I'm just anxious because I know that if we punt it away, we're not going to get it back for like 30 minutes. We're never going to see it again. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. And despite that, at the end of the game, 4th and 7, you're down 2 scores. Carroll's still punting the ball away, and he's asked about it, and he says, well, I trusted my defense to get the ball back. Based off what? We didn't stop them once the whole game.
You touched on it even with the field goal earlier that you talked about. That was the missed field goal, which was on like a 4th and 3 opportunity. You have Russell Wilson as your quarterback. You can't get 3 yards. And this thought process of I'll go and trust my defense. Again, time and time again, you come back with Coach Carroll, and it's that old school approach. It's a 1980s approach to football rather than a modernized approach. There's no aggressiveness. There's no understanding of my defense sucks. Maybe I got to put up as many points as I possibly can put up today. Rather than, just get a field goal, just do nothing. Go for it on 4th down there. Go for it on 4th down in the second half. What do you got to lose? You put your defense on a short field. It's the one part that in mind almost wonders too. I'm okay with going to the 4-3 and more of the zone-based attack, but there's part of me that goes, hell with it. Bring the house every time. And if they score quick, at least it's not a 15-play, 10-minute drive where our offense doesn't get back on the field. And maybe something good could happen in all that aggressiveness of what you're doing. But when he doesn't trust his offense, which is the one good part of his team that's going decent, and then I'm going to go trust my defense instead to get the stop, which they're not doing. Again, it's just, and I know I'm harping on this a little bit, but that's why it's a multitude of things. It's not just the scheme. It's how he's running the football games. And I've seen this with Carroll over recent years. He's gotten less risk averse. Remember Big Balls Pete? Remember with the Matt Hasselbeck build? But where's that guy? Where's the last time that we said, wow, that's a Big Balls Pete move right there. That's a go for move. That's an all in. I can't remember the last time in a game that I watched him do that or make a call like that and go, ooh, all right, Pete, here we go. I think he's a little scared. It's a little bit of playing not to lose, Brendon. That's how I feel right now, a little bit. Playing not to lose.
Right, absolutely. I remember there was a game in 2000, I think it was 2009, Steelers-Packers. The Steelers were up by like a couple of points with 4 minutes left. It was a high-scoring game, and Mike Tomlin onside kicked it, even though his team was up with 4 minutes left. And he basically admitted after the game that I knew our defense was going to give up points, so I actually wanted to give Green Bay only 40 yards to go to score instead of 80 yards to score, because at least then I can get the ball back. He basically said, yeah, I didn't think we were going to recover it. I just wanted to get my defense off the field faster. The Steelers won that game on a 30-yard touchdown pass with no time left, by the way, so it actually really worked out. Could you imagine this coaching staff ever doing something like that, something that forward-thinking?
No, and if forward thinking is the right way to put it. No, they wouldn't do it. They would never.
Yeah. Or how about, do you remember Bill Belichick 4th and 2? That was actually that same season. Patriots Colts, he goes for it on 4th and 2, deep in his own territory, up 6 points, because he was like, I don't care about pinning them back. If I give Peyton Manning the ball back, he's going to go beat me. This is my only chance.
Yeah.
Like, this coaching staff would never do that, ever.
No. And it's a blind spot to the modern NFL. This is that 1980s thing coaching where 1980s, it's hard to get up the field. You can punt the ball, and if you give them a long field, it's not a good chance they're going to go score. The modern era that is more built towards offenses, the rules that are built towards offenses, it's easier to score than at any time in NFL history. And if you've not adjusted your coaching repertoire to deal with that in any way, shape, and form, you're going to get left in the dust, and your decision making is going to be called upon, because people are going to look at things and, why did you do that there? Why'd you do that there? Why'd you do that? You're making the wrong move here. You're not ever thinking outside the box with it. And there's no outside the box. There's no innovation. There's no aggressiveness. It's just sort of stand around and just kind of wait for things to get better or hope things turn around. And it's it's why I'm so frustrated as I am with the situation, because that's you can take some control of this. You can try to do some things and be proactive. But instead, as we've seen even with the players that have gone off the board this week, CJ Henderson, Richard Sherman, Josh Gordon, just sort of just sitting on their hands. No, we're good. We've seen good enough on the field right now to know that we can just stand pat. We don't need to go out there and do anything go grab guys that wouldn't cost any draft capital, who aren't going to cost us a lot of money on one-year deals. Why would we want that? Why should we go make those kind of moves?
Yeah, the CJ Henderson one really got me, because that's a guy who's young, he's cheap, he's a blue chipper. He played zone in Florida, I think. That one got on my nerves. The Sherman thing I can take or leave because I don't think he has much left. Josh Gordon, it's not like receiver's really the problem overall.
No.
But the CJ Henderson thing, the only thing that Carroll and Schneider could say about not going after him that would make me go, okay, I can at least see that perspective would be his personality issues. It seems like he's a little bit of there's a little something going on there. He's got a bit of an attitude problem. And if they said, we just really didn't want to introduce somebody like that to our locker room, I might go, okay, I don't know if I agree, but okay, I can see it that way. But I cannot understand why you wouldn't go after that guy, because the thing is, CJ Henderson, he could be good for this team this year. He could be good for the team that you have in 3 years. He could be good for the team you have in 6 years. He's a move for the present and the future. And we just weren't interested, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and it was even one of those things, if it was a matter of because it was a 3rd round pick and then a 5th round pick given back. I know there's a Dan Arnold thrown in, but that didn't probably matter. It was the 3rd to the 5th. So they give the 3rd up, they get a 5th back. Back in the day, we'd say, well, if we're offering the same 3rd as another team that like the Panthers had offered it, you'd say, well, the team would turn us down because we're going to have a better record at the end of the year. So they'll go to the Panthers team. I don't know that a team would be looking at us right now in the Panthers and going, well, we'll necessarily have a better record than the Panthers at the end of the year where this breaks down. I don't know if that would have held it back, and that maybe you coming in saying, hey, we'll give a 3rd rounder and you don't have to throw us a 5th rounder back might have been enough to get that deal done. I'm with you. I would have liked to get it done. When it comes to Sherman, I'm mainly with you in the respect of I don't think he has a lot left, but I think he's better than Trey Flowers. I do think that. And I don't know if Sidney Jones is going to be the answer. And when you look at this deeply across the league at the cornerback situation right now, there are not a lot of cornerbacks available via trade, either now or leading up into the trade deadline. And we've got a few teams out there that are actually looking at the cornerback room and needing some help right now that are going to be competing with us for those guys. If we want to look at Stephon Gilmore, we're going to have guys competing with us to try to make that trade. And so with Sherman, it was cheap. You could have got him on a $3 million deal, a 1-year deal. And he is less than he is than what he was prior. It's still much further ahead than what Trey Flowers is currently right now as a player, in my opinion. Especially when talking about the communication stuff. He'll know what spot to be in. He's not going to be doing this. Which my little point on this, Brendon, it makes me laugh my ass off, frankly, that you run one of the most simplified coverage schemes in the entire NFL. I mean, it does not get more vanilla, yet somehow they're confused on what their responsibility is playing and play out throughout this last game. Something doesn't add up with that. Something, you're not Miami Dolphins. You're not asking your corners to show one thing pre-snap, then go to this. But if you see that, then go over here. But then if you see that, go over here. You ask them to play cover 3 bail technique the majority of the time. What is there to get confused about? You know?
Yeah, that's kind of why I said what I said about us actually needing to simplify things a little bit, because even though you're right about that whole thing about what you see is what you get with this defense, they are doing some things. I actually did a video breakdown of a bunch of plays against the Vikings where we dropped defensive linemen into coverage, and it's not working. Like every time we drop a defensive lineman back into coverage, it doesn't do anything, and usually the defensive lineman in coverage gives up the play. And besides, we can't get any QB pressure right now anyway. Why are you dropping your best pass rushers into coverage? It doesn't make any sense to me. But I do kind of understand that part of it, where maybe he's just struggling with that element of the defense where they are trying to do creative stuff. But yeah, you're right. The thing is, this is something that should have been taken care of in the offseason, the preseason training camp. You should not be getting 3 games into the season and realizing, oh, these guys can't do this. That should have been resolved before this season started. And I feel that way about a lot of things. If Poona Ford can't play 3-tech, you should have realized that in training camp. If Trey Flowers was going to regress, you should have realized that in camp. And here's another one. And Field Goals actually did an article on this earlier today, moving DJ Reed to left cornerback, where he has looked really bad. And all of his good play from his career so far, both here and in Frisco, came as right cornerback. That's where he was good for us last year. That's where he showed flashes in Frisco, I believe. So you just take a bet like, oh, we'll just move him to the other side and he'll be fine. And he looks awful now. So these are things you should have realized do not work in the preseason or in training camp.
Yeah, You're right. This should have been solved. We give them credit on this, and we have to give them credit a little bit for this. They're the professionals on this. They're watching the practices as you and I can't watch. We can watch games. We can dive deep into the games. We don't know what you're seeing practice-wise to give you confidence in a player. And so we're going to take, you and I, we're left in this spot at times where we have to take for granted the coaching staff is being somewhat intelligent in the way they're looking at it, not just blindly going, it'll work. And if it's not working right now, just give it 3 or 4 months, and I'm sure we'll see a different result later on. But that indeed does seem to be a bit of the mentality at play right now, because there's a lot of evidence to show us that that's the mentality at play right now. The cornerback stuff with Achille Witherspoon, I liked it from the respect of, I didn't want to spend $14.5 million on Shaq Griffin and for $4.5 million. But if you realize coming to the camp that he ain't good, go make another move now and make it now. Don't wait. There's just Geno Atkins still remains on the market. I don't know if he sucked in his workout when he came into Seattle, and that's the reason why he can't get signed now. But that would seem like a pretty straightforward way to, fix the 3-tech. You're sitting on $13 million of cap space. He's not going to cost more than probably about $3 million. Why is it that they're sitting so still, Brendon? I mean, why is this team sitting so just as though someone's told them not to make a move almost,
Yeah, and unfortunately, the only really good answer I can think of for that is maybe they're kind of resigned to their fate this year and they don't want to spend more money. They don't want to take on more contracts because they know what's going to be coming this offseason. They want to maintain maximum flexibility. And that's something that I'm really not okay with because we don't even have our first round pick.
No.
But maybe to a certain extent, the team is just like, okay, if the guys we have get it together, great. But if not, we want to keep as much cap room as possible. We want to keep as much of our roster flexibility as possible. So that's the only thing you can think of. And I'm not okay with that because I don't want to think about what this offseason might look like if things don't go well this season, because logically, Carroll should probably go at that point, but if he doesn't want to go, he probably won't. So does Wilson go? I'm not okay with that either, because I don't think he should be choosing the oldest head coach in the league over a quarterback who still probably has 5 good years left. So, yeah, I'm not okay with that, but that's what I'm feeling.
I think that I'm not okay with it either, but it gets even worse, I think, Brendon. I'd be interested to see if you think this as well, if that it's a little more nefarious, because it would also mean that you went through into this training camp going, we have in mind to probably keep that 13 million and roll it over. We're not going to convert Russell's base to bonus. We have pretty much a soft intention here to just ride through this season and then let Russell move on at that point, because his $39 million dead money hit goes down to $26 million. And that's where I get mad. Because you weren't really trying to repair bridges at that. It's like the Richard Sherman call to him on the flight, right? They could have gotten Sherman if they really wanted to him at any point in time. They could have brought Sherman in over this last couple months. And to his own words, they sort of were just kind of soft shoeing him a little bit on it, soft playing him a little bit on it. But you now have you now arrive at the point where he's on a plane to go to Tampa Bay, and you make a call at the last minute. Why? So that you can tell your fans that we gave a try, we gave an effort. But that's BS. You weren't giving an effort. You're lying to us in that. And whether you want Richard Sherman or not, that's just a lie. You didn't want him, but you're trying to resolve this on a PR thing. You're trying to not take any heat, because you guys don't ever want to take any heat. Don't take any responsibility for your poor decision making on stuff. So you make it look like you tried something at the 25th hour. And that's the same thing about this season and sitting on the $13 million and not trying to build up as the best offensive line you could have for Russell Wilson. Get out, go talk to Joe Thuney. Go out there, talk to Corey Linsley. Get the positions fixed. Don't move Damian Lewis from right guard to left guard like you've done with this Puna Ford situation. The same old story with things. Moving guys from one position they're good at to another position they're not. You just mentioned DJ Reed. You constantly see the same mistakes made over and over again. And that's why I always harp on with this. No one's taking responsibility because they keep making the same mistakes. And sitting on that $13 million is inexcusable. Inexcusable when you're trying to hold on to a Hall of Fame quarterback heading through the back end of his prime. Inexcusable. And he should be sent out on a rail, frankly, with this going this direction on it. I will have no patience for Carroll with it. And that's what this picture is starting to get clear, in my opinion, as to what really went down from this offseason to season and what the real grand plan was in place. Because you're right. Carroll's not on the hot seat. Carroll wants to stay here. He can stay here. No one's going to push him out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I did a video talking about it from the perspective of Jody Allen, because some people were asking about, well, what about her? Doesn't the buck stop with her? And I kind of understand that. I kind of understand why people might say that. But the reality is, even if you look at like really good owners, like the Rooneys in Pittsburgh, are we going to say that the Rooneys only care about money and they don't care at all if the Steelers win every game or lose every game? No, of course not. they're one of the gold standards, but they've stuck with Mike Tomlin with no Super Bowl appearance for, I think, 11 years. No Super Bowl win in 13 years.
Yeah.
And you look in Green Bay, look how long they stuck with Mike McCarthy. And Green Bay's title town. Are we going to say that the Green Bay franchise is some loser franchise that doesn't care about winning? No, they're all about titles. Yeah. So the reality is you're looking at several bad seasons before you even entertain the possibility of moving on from Carroll. He might decide to move on his own, but that's different. If he wants to stay, he's probably going to get to stay. And I can't totally blame the ownership for that. I just, as a fan who really tries to pay attention to this stuff, who really tries to notice the little things, who notices things like this is year 4 of the defense rebuild and it's still not any good, who notices things like every time we make a controversial decision, it seems like it goes wrong. We're not getting these little things right anymore. Like the days when teams laughed at us for putting Cam Chancellor at safety or thinking Richard Sherman was going to be a starting cornerback, and it always worked. Yeah, that stuff doesn't work anymore. No, now you've got like Kyle Fuller. We think, oh, he's actually going to be good at center for us through 3 games. Maybe he hasn't been a complete disaster, but he might be one of the worst centers in the league. He might be. I don't know, but I feel like he is. And the Poona Ford thing and the DJ Reed thing and the Trey Flowers thing, every time we do something unconventional, like here's another example. When we drafted Jordan Brooks, I hated that pick. I hated it. I was streaming at the time, couldn't stand it. Some people said, well, he's a run-stopping linebacker. And I said, that's stupid. I don't want to stop the run in the modern NFL. I don't care about run defense. And people said, well, in our division against the 49ers and Cardinals, it makes sense that you want a guy like that because those teams run the ball so much. And not only do I think that doesn't really hold water, but we can't even stop the run now. No, this is the only time in Carroll's coaching history in Seattle, the only time he's been here where we have consistently been unable to stop the run, I think.
Yeah, and that's why this is as much as any time with him is building this roster like he has to stop the run first and foremost with your Jordan Brooks picks in the first round, with putting the 2 1-techs out there on early down at the sacrifice on early downs and pass rush, by the way. You put the big body 1-techs down there to sacrifice pass rush. I know Poona Ford's supposed to be in this 3, but he's a 1-tech doing 3-tech, you know? And when you have Brian Monet in there, he's a 1-tech doing 3-tech. And so you are not getting the results despite putting all of this personnel, despite doing the 4-3 under, which is essentially getting you a linebacker who's a de facto defensive end to give you a 5th defensive lineman down on the line. You should have no problem stopping the run at that point. We had one of the highest prevalence last week of 8 men in the box throughout the whole league. We brought that extra defender in the box last week a huge amount of time, still couldn't stop the run. You know, it's and again and again with you things you're talking about there with Carroll, it comes back to again, run stuffing linebacker. When was that important, Brendon? Probably about 1984. 1984, that was important. But again and again, we come back to the 80s mentality with Carroll and how he views defenses and football teams and managing a football team rather than it's 35 years now ahead of that. You got to do this now in what's a modern age, which is a passing-centric league. You have a linebacker who can't cover worth a damn. Guess what? Offenses are going to attack that all day long. They're not just going to ignore him in coverage. They're going to attack him constantly in coverage. And unfortunately for those people, you were mad. I was mad on that night. I freaked out. I lost my stuff because of the fact that doesn't get better. Everyone goes, oh, he'll get better. No, he won't. No, he won't. No, he won't. He might get a little bit better, but it's going to always be a detriment on his game. So he better be one hell of a run stuffing linebacker at that point. And the guy's not. He's now regressing as a run stuffing linebacker. He's worse this year as far as stopping the run than he was last year, which I don't explain that one to me.
Yeah, and he's, as near as I can tell, he's been benched twice already this season. Some people were saying, oh, he didn't get benched in the Vikings game. He got injured, but I think he got benched too. So he's kind of in Carroll's doghouse now, which, by the way, I don't really even agree with that. Like, he's young. Keep him out there. If he's going to be bad, let him be bad, and then you can get rid of him.
You know he's going to be bad in coverage. Don't bench him for what you knew when you drafted him. Like, you're going to get mad at a guy because he's not good in coverage. Like, you knew that. You want the guy on the field. He's a hitter. He's a tackler. He'll stop the run, which you're supposed to care about first and foremost. And I'm not gonna be shocked when he gives up catches. But I expect him to be on the field. He's a first round pick, and you haven't had a lot of first round picks. Get him on the field. I don't get it either. I don't, especially when you're moving him out for Cody Barton, who might actually be worse in all aspects beyond Jordan Brooks, who's literally shown nothing himself to be on the football field, but himself keeps getting run out there time and time again.
Right. All right, so I think that's enough about where this team is right now. We got to talk about this 49ers game because this is important. And even if this team isn't going to be as what we wanted it to be this year, then it can still be a decent team. It can still be a team that maybe guts out a playoff spot. It can still at least win more than they lose. It can be a decent season still, but it's not going to be if you lose this game, I don't think. I think that 1-3, you can kind of start crossing it off a little bit. So this 49ers game, we're going into Frisco. Niners are 2-1 coming off a crushing loss to Green Bay. What do you see with those guys? What are you thinking about this one?
I think that the lack of running back depth has hurt them a little bit. You know, them getting cute, moving on from Wayne Gallman, and then having them Raheem Mostert injury come up, and Trey Sermon out of Ohio State, the guy they drafted in this last draft's really kind of coming along a little slowly. And I think that it's impacting a lot of the way things go down with them in their running game right now. What also hurts him a little bit with Garoppolo is that he's into that point where he's not pushing the ball up the football field. He's almost to a point being he's scared at times, it would seem like, to push the ball up the football field. So what you have defenses do, as far as the tape I've seen, is they bring everybody up into the box, right? Stack the box up, and then they drop into the short routes, which are easier to cover, right? If you're coming off a stacked front in the defense, and then you've got to drop into a 4-step drop into a short coverage range to take away the quarterback's bread and butter, that's kind of easy to do. And now it's back on the quarterback at that point to be able to beat you up over the top, which they are not able to do with Garoppolo right now. This is part of why they probably drafted Trey Lance, the guy with the big arm who can make those throws eventually for them. But that's where this will come from, is you stop the run, get to your short routes, and then force Jimmy to get you up over the top. And as far as I stand, this is actually a place where I have a reasonable amount, despite as low as I am on this team, I've got a reasonable amount of confidence coming into this game, because it seems like over recent years, we've been a tough matchup for the Shanahan teams led by Garoppolo. If it was that scrunchy face dude, remember the scrunchy face guy, the backup coming for the Niners, and he just come in and just cut us apart? I forget what was his
Nick
name.
Mullins did that.
Nick Mullins, yeah, I call him scrunchy face because he's in his helmet.
Yeah.
He's always, his eyes were down, and his up here at the top. That guy would just decimate us. But Garoppolo, for some reason, he just kind of struggles against our defense. It's just a tough matchup for him. So that's a key defensive, and then offensive balance. Run the ball, short passing attack. Their corner situation is paper thin. No Verrett. Mosley's, I think, dealing with some injuries. They don't have a lot else back there to go with. You should be able to get into that secondary pretty good all the way around. Short, middle, intermediate, long.
Right. So you could call this week the stoppable force versus the movable object.
Yeah.
With the 49ers offense, with a quarterback that isn't pushing it down the field, and a weak running game because they don't have any running backs, versus our defense that, I'll say it again, I think they played the worst game they have ever played under Carroll. I really do, because nothing went well. I know 30 points. People are going to get fooled by 30 points. It was much worse than that.
Yeah.
If the Vikings needed to score 50 points to win that game, they probably would have. They would have scored whatever they needed to win that game.
Agreed.
But yeah, so I saw that Shanahan has already said that Jimmy Garoppolo is going to continue to start, which I think tells you that Trey Lance is really not ready. He must just, because he clearly has talent. He has way more talent than Garoppolo. It's not even close. And for them to feel like they would rather stick with a guy who can do nothing but check it down, they must really feel like Trey Lance is not ready, which thank the Lord for that, because I cannot deal with that right now. I do not want to deal with what Trey Lance is going to do when he's ready. I'm going to say that.
Oh, we got a problem a year or two down the road from now when he gets to be and he was a guy that dominated at 19 years old, the college football scene, right? So when he's coming in, he's 21. He's a young guy coming in, not just a rookie, but a young rookie. And so it's understandable why they would want to take a little bit more time with him, but he's going to be a problem a couple of years down the road in the Shanahan offense. I'm not looking forward to those time periods. One reason it would be nice if we could strike while the iron's hot right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, although I don't know how hot the iron really is. The Rams went all in. The Cardinals are all in. So I don't know how hot it is, but I do get what you're saying. The Niners could be a problem for a while. I'm happy they didn't get Zach Wilson, though, because I think he's actually going to be the non-Trevor Lawrence QB who's the best of this class.
He's the one I missed on. It's a weird thing with me. Every year or two, there's a quarterback or two that people are on, and I should be like able to wrap my head around why they're good and get it. And I can kind of see it with Wilson. I just couldn't quite get fully on board with it, but I think it's going to be one of my misses as far as looking at the quarterbacks. I added as Lawrence, Trey Lance. I think I went Justin Fields, and then I went Wilson even below him. And when I was looking at these guys, but I'm fully open to the fact that I was probably missing something with Wilson in my film study and when I was looking at with the guy, 100%.
All right, so let's talk about this 49ers defense for a little bit here because they lost their coach. They lost a couple of pieces. They've now lost Verrett. They weren't anticipating losing him, obviously. But they still got Fred Warner. They still got some good pieces. And what are you seeing with them? Because last year, they had a ton of injuries, and they were still one of the best defenses in the league, which was really an amazing job by Robert Saleh, which got him his head coaching job. What are you seeing with them without Saleh so far?
The surprising transition they made this offseason that kind of blew me away was in they're going to this, the defense they're going to right now is to move away from the zone principles and go to man. If you're going to do that as a secondary, you need to do just like if you're going from being a zone blocking scheme to a man-on-man blocking scheme to the offensive line, you now, or a 3-4 to a 4-3, you need to change personnel up now. Don't expect it. We can't, if we went to a man-on-man scheme, do we think Trey Flowers is going to hold up for half a second in that kind of scheme? No way. So I don't know why they thought these guys would be able to do it, especially when they weren't going for uber talented guys on the outside to do it. I think they were just hoping their pass rush was so ferocious at that point, the guys would only have to cover for like a second and a half. But they went to the man scheme. They've not really had it, I think, is exploited as much as even a team like us can kind of do it. Green Bay got a little into them last week, but Green Bay's in there. We're going to be balanced kind of mode right now as they're trying to get off that first loss of the season and get themselves back to playing Packer ball, essentially. But we could get into that secondary because of that. They don't have the guys out there. They're going to hang in man. And that's, of course, based upon us keeping the pass rush off of us because the pass rush has been good. It has been pretty good. Bosa looks like he's rebounded off the ACL. Ford's given him a little bit of pass rush in there. Javon Kinlaw is still not developed as their top 10 pick from last year, the 3-tech, who I thought was the best 3-tech coming out of the last draft last year, but he's not been able to really come along so far. The linebacker core is solid all the way through. They're probably going to stop the run, and it's going to come down to us being able to stay back into embracing the short passing attack and just attacking those man corners. Just stay on top of those man corners, keep testing them because I don't think they've got a talent enough to hold out with DK and Tyler out there. Say nothing if Eskridge also comes back into this game, which it looks like.
Yeah, it looks like he will. Yeah, and our receivers for at least the start of that game against the Vikings, they were beating up on those corners. The other guy they had starting who wasn't Patrick Peterson, I can't remember his name, but he was matched up against DK to start. It was going very poorly for him, especially on that first drive. Now, it ended up not mattering, but it shows you that there is a talent deficiency between most teams' cornerbacks and our receivers. So you got to take advantage of that. So I think I'm kind of on the same wavelength as you. This is the kind of game that even if our defense doesn't necessarily fix themselves yet, they should be able to do something against that Niners team. So where are you at with a prediction? Like, do you think we will win this game? Basically, let's just start there.
I do for the concept that's gotten us beat for the last 2 weeks. There's a thing in the NFL when you as a team get to some weird, desperate state where the fan base is freaking out and you're a good team, not a bad team, but you're actually a team with some talent, that there's this sort of rally the wagons type thing, circle the wagons type situation. And you can sort of squeeze that juice out, wring it out for one game. And sometimes it gets you a couple games, sometimes it gets you on a little run, but one game you can usually at least ring it out of. So the Titans did it to us, right? They got beat double-digit point loss in the first week for a team that's supposed to be a divisional winner. They came back and beat us next week as a really desperate team. Obviously, like we got to put something else better. That was an awful performance. Last week, Minnesota was in threat of going 0-3 to start their season if they lose to us at home. There was a sense of desperation in that team. There was a sense of we've got to, everybody, all hands kind of on deck that can be on deck, and we need to be playing this game like this matters. This is our season a little bit. Seattle, likewise, is going to be sitting in this situation in San Francisco this week. They're coming into it all week, having heard all this noise, all this talk, should have brought Sherman in, didn't bring Sherman in. And this is going to be a heat check. And my instinct on this is that both offensively and on the defensive side of the ball, at least for 1 week, you're going to get a little bit of that squeezing out that couple drops of productivity as everybody's kind of like, oh, we got to stay on point here. I don't know if it lasts and maintains on past that point, but I think just where you're striking right now in this point of the given season, coming on the heels of the 2 losses, never losing 3 in a row with Russell Wilson here, just like that Vrabel stat I gave you a couple weeks ago, right? Where Vrabel's 7-0. Anytime he's been double-digit beat, he was 7-0 coming into that game playing us, and now they're 8-0 having played us out of that game and won that game. I feel a little bit like that with the 3-loss stat, where you bring everything you got to bear at that point. You're not holding anything back, and you let it ride at least for one game.
Right. And one thing I do want to say about the Seahawks under Carroll, they have generally had a lot of success when I and many others have started to count them out. There have been games over the Carroll era where I just kind of counted them out. There have been times where I just felt like, well, this season's over. And repeatedly, they find a way back. I do have to give them credit for that.
Yeah.
In 2012, we lost to the Dolphins, and I thought, well, that's it. This team is just going to be 8-8 again. And I don't think they lost again until the playoff game in Atlanta.
Yeah.
After that one, 2014, they lost to the Chiefs. They were 6-4, and I was like, okay, this team just isn't that good. They didn't lose again until the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Smaller examples than that exist as well. 2015, I counted them out after they lost to Arizona. I thought the season was over, and they basically won out. 2016, I remember we played in Foxborough, and I was like, okay, this is going to be the game where we finally get blown out. We have never been blown out with Wilson. We're going to get blown out here. No, we won that game. Even 2017, we played the eventual Super Bowl champion Eagles, and I was like, what are we going to do in this game? Because we had so many injuries. Sherman was out. Cam was out. Everybody was out, and I was like, well, okay, I guess I'm just going to watch us get kicked around for 3 hours and go to bed. No, we won that game. So this team usually does answer the bell. I will give them some credit for that.
They're very resilient. Carroll's usually had that in his back pocket. So you're right. They've, historically speaking, that's part of where I am counting a little of that, at least for this game. They'll be able to tap back into that a bit. I don't know if it'll last. I don't know if you can make it go past a 1 week off. But I do think this particular week where we're landing on, it's sort of like an eclipse. It's the right time for them to sort of get them the energy in that right moment, a right matchup, right energy. This is about the 3 matchups in this division. I don't know if your opinion on this, we match up best against San Francisco than the other 2 teams. Like the other 2 teams have problematic issues to them that make it harder to play than, to me, the San Francisco 49ers by just a little bit. Niners are good, but those other teams have just got elements that just give us a little more problems in certain respects, I think.
Right. And the thing with the Titans and Vikings is that they have competent quarterbacks. Those are not elite quarterbacks, but they can do the things. They're functional. They're completely functional quarterbacks. I don't think Garoppolo is. I think Garoppolo might be a bottom 5 QB in the league. Yeah. He is basically the modern version of Rex Grossman to me. That's the best comparison I can make. Yes, he can throw a decent ball sometimes, but on the whole, he's bad. And while guys like Cousins and Tannehill can hit wide open receivers the whole game because they're good enough to do that, I don't even think Garoppolo can do that much. I don't think Garoppolo can even take the easy throw every single time and just march down the field.
It's always with me, the quarterback. I start first and foremost. I don't end here, but I start first and foremost with arm strength. And if you're lacking arm strength, it's going to show up. And that's why if you don't have as a quarterback, I don't care what a leader you are. I don't care how much touch you throw with. Garoppolo's a big touch guy. I don't care. You don't have the power to push the ball and make all the throws on the football field. You're going to limit me as an offense. You're going to limit you as a quarterback, and that's going to limit our upside as a team overall. And that's where the 49ers have found themselves in here, frankly. This is why you should never short sell your quarterback position. Truly go for the talent, because that's what you need at the position. You got to be able to challenge defenses all the way around the football field, and he can't do it. I just don't think, and the word's out.
Yeah, a couple more little notes about this game. One thing that I'm really going to be watching, just to kind of start wrapping it up here, one thing that I'm really interested in is how Dwayne Brown plays, because I don't know if you saw this. Dwayne Brown played one of the worst games of his career against the Vikings, apparently. Supposedly, according to PFF, he allowed 7 pressures by himself in that game, which watching the game, I didn't see. I didn't think he played that bad.
I didn't either.
Now, so that surprised me, and I would like to review the tape and look at some of those pressures. Some of them might have been screen passes where the pressure is like planned. It's you get pressured by design because you're trying to let the pass rusher past you so you can throw the screen. But Dwayne Brown seemed like he did not play that well, and that's your rock. That's the guy you, in your mind, are thinking, we don't have to worry about that guy. Maybe we have to worry about all these other things. Dwayne Brown's going to lock it down. So I want to see how he plays against this Niners team. That's going to be something that I'm really keeping an eye on, because if Dwayne Brown is falling apart this year, if this is the end, I don't know what we do. I don't think there's a recourse. Maybe you trade for Taylor Decker. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, you would definitely have to go do another trade of a left tackle and find it. There have been recent years of some guys on the market in free agency time at the left tackle position where, like this offseason, if you really wanted to push and make a hard go at Trent Williams, you could have made a hard go at Trent Williams. It would have cost you the earth, the moon, and the stars. But there is a guy like that some does exist out there. You can theoretically kind of push for. It's going to be tough if he goes down. When you said that with Dwayne Brown, the question I was going to ask is, what player right now, offense or defensive side of the ball on this team, is playing above what we've come to expect of them? Who's having their breakout career? And if you look across the board, offense and defensive side of the ball, everyone's basically below what they've been at in their league history so far. And be it a Damian Lewis, be it a Dwayne Brown, to
Tyler
me,
Lockett's had a great
Lockett,
start to
yeah,
the season. I'll
Lockett
give it
has
to
had a
him.
great start. Yep, I'd give you that. But it's something when you got 22 players and you can only really point to one or two who are playing above what kind of is their league average. You need a few more of those players every year to kind of pop in that. Is kind of my point. Is you need a couple more than that than just one or two, and everybody else below league. And again, that to me comes back to a little bit of the coaching and
Right.
not getting the most out of your players.
Right. And I've actually gotten in some kind of sort of fights with people in my comments over the last few days because I don't know how you feel about this, but a couple people have come to me and said, "Oh, we don't have talent. That's the problem. We don't have enough talent. We don't have enough good players." And I'm looking at this and I'm going, okay, look at our corners, for instance. Against the Vikings, Trey Flowers played awful, but so did DJ Reed. So did Ugo Amadi, by the way. Ugo Amadi might have had his worst game as a Seahawk.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, okay, did all three of these guys plus Quandre Diggs just forget how to play football at the same time?
Plus
Did
Jamal
they all?
Adams.
Yeah, and Jamal Adams didn't play very well against the Vikings either. He didn't do anything to stand out to me as awful, but he's not living up to what he's supposed to be. But the point is, I'm also looking at these pass rushers. Like Dunlap didn't really do anything against the Vikings. Alton didn't do anything. Honestly, our only pass rusher who played well against the Vikings, I think, was Darrell Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking at that and I'm going, okay, did all of our players just choose this exact moment in time to forget how to play football? Or is it schematic? Is it coaching? And what's more likely? Do you think all these guys got together and was like, hey, you know what's going to be funny? Let's all pretend we never played football at the same time to start this season. Like that shouldn't happen.
No.
I've seen these guys play well in previous years. I've seen them play well on other teams. So I'm looking at this and I'm going, how can it not be something with this team that is bigger than the players?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I don't push this on the players. If it was a guy here, a guy there, but it's across the board. And when it's almost unanimous across the board of everybody playing below what they are as a player and what they should be playing as a player, you have one place you point that to. And that does come to coaching or scheme or whatever, but it's outside the player's control at that point. Because like you said, they didn't all get together and have a kumbaya meeting about how we're going to deep six Coach Carroll's last year as a coach here. Nobody that. So it does come down to me at that point of your coaches aren't getting the job done. They're not putting the players in a position to succeed. And that's the coach's job. It's not the coach's just to say, okay, players, go on the field and play. We'll train you through the week. It's you to put the players in a position to succeed, to be in advantageous spots to take advantage of their talents. And I don't see any proof of that. I don't see in the proof that the way they move guys around from position to position off of what is their strongest position, that in itself harms our team, and they do it at every turn versus the right players they've had on there. I mean, Alton Robinson and Darrell Taylor have been our highest graded defensive linemen, but neither of them can really finally Alton did get a little bit in this game, but Rasheem still got more snaps than him, I believe, in this game. Why aren't those two guys getting more snaps when they're being your best players? And it's not just the PFF, it's to our eyes. You can see it with your eyes, Dalton and Darrell. You can see him causing the pressure. You can see Darrell Taylor causing a strict sack fumble. What is it you guys are seeing in the practice week that makes you lean to Benson Mayo and Rasheem Green over these guys? It's just decision making again and again with this coaching staff. It's how they're putting these players in their position, and it's kind of right now so far been sort of a failure at every turn from their standpoint. Can it improve? Can they turn it around? Can things, like you said, there's a weird miraculous resurgency that comes in with this team at times. We can't put our finger as to how it happens, but they find a way. But man, we got to see a few more silver linings here to get that feeling, right? To get that instinct that that's a possibility.
Right. And I think this is a pretty good kind of way to start really closing out this show because, I get these people who call me spoiled because I basically said that Carroll needs to step down after the Vikings game. I did. And people were like, well, we win more games than we lose every year. We almost always make the playoffs. And my thing is, that's the bare minimum when you have a franchise quarterback. If we didn't have a good quarterback and we were making the playoffs every year, then yeah, I wouldn't have anything negative to say. If we were making the playoffs every year with even a Sam Darnold type quarterback or Ryan Fitzpatrick, then of course I would have nothing negative to say about the people building the team. But I think people forget that having a franchise quarterback is the hardest. It's most of the hard part of getting a good team. This is a quarterback driven league. If you have a quarterback, making the playoffs cannot be the goal. It should be the mission statement, the very first part of the mission statement. And then you go from there. Yeah. So the reality is losing these games early in the season, they're not going to prevent us from making the playoffs. They prevent us from winning the division. They prevent us from playing at home. They prevent us from getting a first round bye. And we end up in the situation that we've been in constantly the last 7 years?
It's a long debated argument I've had on my channel with folks about, what's the value of being a consistent winner? What's the value of being a one and done team for 6 straight years? And it's a place where you're really not going to get any sort of resolution between the arguing parties, because I don't really buy into the we're spoiled and therefore we just have to take our medicine right now and just be happy with the old times and just sit on it. No, we can, because things can be fixed. Things can be turned around. When you sit in a place and say, well, we had success in the past, so it's bad now, but that's okay. We'll just deal with it. That's the same issue that's plaguing our coaching staff right now, in the explanations, in the excuses, in the no one taking any responsibility. If no one takes any responsibility, if no one says, hey, we got a problem here and it's got to get fixed, it won't get fixed, and it will last that much longer because of it. Coach Carroll did not create the winning culture here. This is the part. Let me just piggyback off this real quick, Brendon, because that's what really goes hand in hand with this. Well, Coach Carroll came here and it was dark, and it was like the dark ages of the medieval times. We were dying on the streets of starvation. We were looking for winners so badly. No, the winning culture here started when Paul Allen came aboard in 1998. That's when the winning culture started here. That. So it doesn't end and begin with Coach Carroll. It won't end and begin when he moves on. It ends and begins with an ownership group who is is all in on winning, who's all in on creating a winner for the local area, like Paul Allen was. I respect what his sister's doing. I don't follow her in the release because she's trying to carry on her brother's legacy. I get where she's coming from, but she's not a football fan, and she's not all in like he was. And we would benefit from an owner who was back in that mentality like Paul Allen was, and holding a coach's feet to the fire, holding a general manager's feet to the fire. But I have no patience or time for, you need to be okay with losing because you've had winning in the recent past. I'm not okay with that. We've established a culture of winning here. It goes back now 20 years because Mike Holmgren won multiple division titles. Mike Holmgren got us to a Super Bowl, and we should have won it if the referees didn't steal that game away from us. That is where it begins. So you look over 20 years, you've had a consistent winning program over that time period. Carroll's starting to muck it up, and it's worth being called it. And I give you a ton of props for having the balls to come out there and say on that day after that game, time for him to go. Because it is the right thing to say. It is appropriate. People don't have to like to hear it, but it doesn't mean it's not the truth. There's so many indications across the board that this is the truth. This is the reality of what we're dealing with. It sucks. Nobody's happy by it. Brendon doesn't like doing it. I don't like doing it. But like him, he's trying to be honest with you guys. And you're getting lost in the forest despite the trees if you're not seeing it at this point, in my opinion.
Right. And not even just losing. I'm not even saying about the whole thing we have to deal with losing because we've won before. I'm saying that just winning is not even necessarily good enough, because just winning kind of gets you where we've been the last 7 years, where we win more than we lose. We're happy more than we're sad, but have we been close to a Super Bowl team once since 2015? The closest we've come is 2019. We were maybe 1 or 2 plays away from going to the NFC title game. We lost to the Packers. That was a close game. Okay, we kind of got close there, but yeah, I'm just.
But to your point earlier about that, you spoke about that earlier about were those two teams, that 2019 team and the 2020 team, with their point differential, with the way that they were winning, was that really a quality football team to really push to the Super Bowl and be challenging to go win a Super Bowl? Is that going to knock the Chiefs off in the Super Bowl? Was that going to knock that 49er team off where they were at that point in time of the year? I mean, they beat us at home a couple weeks prior. If we had gone back on the road to play them, if we had beaten the Packers, which we don't know if we could have done. And I think you're right on when you mention that. I think you're right. Those were misnomer records. And it doesn't matter to me. This is, again, the argument of, would you rather be a loser team for 4 years and then win the Super Bowl in the 5th year, or be a consistent winner for 5 years, getting the playoffs and be a one and done? I'll choose the first, because it's about Super Bowls at the end of the day. This isn't about getting to the playoffs or winning games. It's about, can your team go and win to the Super Bowl? Can it compete for Super Bowl titles? And again, lastly, on your point on this, you have not just a franchise quarterback. You have a Hall of Fame quarterback moving through the back end of his prime. You're dead right. Playoffs should be the bare minimum with that. That basis alone should be the bare minimum. And all you're doing as an organization over the last 5 to 6 years is hitting that bare minimum with that Hall of Fame quarterback.
Right. Okay. I think we've said everything we can say here. I think it's time to go ahead and wrap this up. But thank you, Brendon, for coming on. But real quick, let's get a score prediction for you for this Niners game, actually, because people like those.
I know they do love it. I stepped on myself yesterday because I said 24-21 thinking this was at home and giving Seattle 3 points because it was in Seattle, but it's actually on the road in San Francisco. But we need to win right now. We need to win. 24-21 is where I'll go for Seattle in this game. Offense does just enough. Defense comes back a little bit stronger, stops the run. We give a few points, but I think it'll come down to the end. But 24-21 is where I'm going to sit on this. Our Seahawks take it.
Yeah, I'll go with something like that too. Well, no, I'm going to say we win 2-0. I'm going to say we win 2-0. I'm going to say we turn around our season winning on a safety. I'm going to say it.
I'm
we
with
may as
it.
well, let's do something crazy. Let's just get that win. Everybody watching, thank you for coming out today. Please go check out the Hawk's Nest. If you happen to be one of the people who watches me but doesn't watch him, we both do a lot of similar stuff. He comes at it from a slightly different angle, but we have a lot of the same perspectives. Definitely go check him out. If you're new here, subscribe to me, and we will be doing this every week. Next week on his channel. I will see you guys later. Go Seahawks.
Go Hawks. Thanks for having me on, Brendon.
No problem.